It's Trial Tuesday, and today we're tackling a serious issue that is more common than you might think. Attorney David Ayler is here to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. As always, a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
This is something that happens in, I would say, the majority of workplaces, whether it's mild, extreme.
Right.
So, where do we start if we think someone is sexually harassing us?
Well, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're noting it, meaning that you're not just blowing it off, because when there's a continuous pattern of it that hasn't been reported, it makes it harder to really prove it, because then in that situation, it appears more often that it looks like it's consensual between the two individuals. So it's never good to just sort of blow it off. You may not want to go to extreme reports of, police and that sort of thing, but you at least want to make a report of it internally, try to stop it early on, because if it turns into he said, she said, or he said, or whatever the case may be, if there's been a long pattern of it without any reporting, it's going to make it more difficult on the person who's claiming it's happening to them.
As a woman, that certainly can be an uncomfortable position to be in. Someone says something to you inappropriate, and I can see where you're like, I'll just let it go. I don't want to cause trouble. But you're saying you should go to someone right away.
I think there's a difference. It's really a fine line for each person. There's a difference between maybe someone making a comment that's inappropriate or a joke that you feel uncomfortable with. It's more of a continuous thing. If they're more directing it to you specifically all the time, then you really want to do it that way, because then again, when it's between just the two people, and a lot of times these scenarios aren't when other people are around, that is if it's continuous basis. That way, for instance, if you're going to lunch with this person 3 times a week, and then you come back 6 months later and say, he or she's been harassing me nonstop, well, that's very difficult to show, considering what your other actions are. So at the point that it does feel uncomfortable or you feel it's inappropriate, that then is the time that you want to report it to a manager, to a superior, or maybe even just a coworker if we want to start sort of a little bit lighter than going to the extreme, of course, all the way up to the police.
Now, it's often he said, she said. If you were to report it, he's going to say, I didn't say that. But you were saying with technology, specifically texting, it's a lot easier to prove sometimes. Yeah,
it really is. Oftentimes, we're not going to see people that are going to be emailing coworkers or other people that they have a work relationship with and saying things that are inappropriate, because we all understand where those emails are going and what they can be done and retrieved. And often you're going to be sober in your workplace environment. However, what we often see nowadays, which is helping these type cases that I've been experienced with, is when people are outside of work and they're continuing, the harassment and really stepping it up. Obviously, they're no longer with that person at work. They may be out in some sort of social setting, a lot of times alcohol, maybe even drugs involved, and they get a little bit more boisterous in what they say, or what pictures they may even send. And those are the things that really can assist. Say, hey, look, I wasn't with this person. You can see there's not a track of us texting back and forth, and then he or she sends me this, in the middle of the night or whatever. And those things really help corroborate your story that, in fact, this was unwanted attention that you never asked for, and of course didn't want to put up with in any form or fashion.
It makes it a lot easier to prove. At what point do people come to you, say, I reported at work, now I need an attorney?
And that's an interesting question, because sometimes people will report it at work and they'll feel like for whatever reason work is ignoring it. So then you really have two problems. You're looking at the issue of the person who was doing it, and then the fact that the employer is ignoring trying to retaliate or come back with any type of discipline. So that's one thing we see a lot of times early. Other times you'll see situations when it's a superior that has been harassing them, and then they're let go from their job and say, look, I wasn't, interested in his or her sexual advances that were continuous. Now I've lost my job. So it's really at the point, unfortunately, sometimes where something negative has already happened. However, sometimes you'll see when they come early. So what I always suggest is it's not going to cost a lot of money, maybe none at all, to go sit down with an attorney and say, where should I go? Here's what's happening. I don't really know what the next step is. I mean, these things can obviously get extreme, where the police have to get involved. At a minimum, though, there may be a scenario where you have some type of, retort that you can go back after, simply because the employers themselves aren't doing what they should do.
Are you seeing more cases of this? I mean, I feel like at work we're educated all the time. We all take the sexual harassment training, but because of, texting and things like that, are you seeing it more frequently because people can do it that way?
I think you're not only seeing it more frequently, I think you're seeing it being able to be proven more frequently. There's these messages that are sent in the middle of the night, or pictures, or Facebook messages, or whatever type of social media that are completely inappropriate. And the real part there is you're not having to show the record of this. You're saying, here's where this person has contacted me 6 times in the last 4 weeks. At work there's been comments made. but it's almost more like they really start to do it. It piles on after work. And when you have that evidence, that digital evidence, which we all know is going nowhere, no matter how much you want to raise it, and this includes Snapchat and everything else, you know, it's not going anywhere. That really helps bring the issue forward and has helped us be able to recover in some cases.
Attorney David Aylor, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
We've got much more Low Country Live right after the break.